Good afternoon, everyone. Hello for me. Good to be in the house of the Lord with you today. Let's see what the Lord has for us today. Today's scripture reading is from Joshua chapter 5, verses 13 to 15, which states, "Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, 'Are you with us, or are you for our enemies?' 'Neither,' he replied, 'but the commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come.' Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, 'What message does my Lord have for his servant?' The commander of the Lord's army replied, 'Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy.' And Joshua did so." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Jackson. I'm going to introduce to you a very special guest to us. If you've been with the mission for a couple years, then you'll know him. We are so honored to have Robert Jin with us today. He worked with Church at the Mission for a year and a half. I would say a year and a half, covering Florence's maternity leave. He just became so part of the community, and we really love him dearly. If you know him, you come to love him dearly. And he's such a warm and just a man who loves the Lord. And so we are really blessed by him. He has worked with Church at the Mission, and he also works with Youth Unlimited, with young dads. And he's just a man who loves Jesus overall. So everything that he does it to love the Lord. So we're honored to have you, Robert, and he will share the word with us today.
Give me a sec here. Good to see everyone. Very good to see you. All these lovely faces, seriously. Very lovely. Let me just wipe things. So, you've been on this journey, I think, for the past couple weeks of Old Testament stories and some characters. So this morning not this morning, it's the afternoon. We are going to take a look at Joshua as just read by Jackson. Thank you, Jackson, for reading that. So before I start, now don't be alarmed. I'm going to show, I like showing pictures. So don't be alarmed with the first one. I'll explain it as best as possible. Let me start by saying this. I think it's safe to say that most of us have good intentions, or we think we have good intentions, right? So let me show you some examples, but here's one first example. So this is supposed to be a cake, a birthday cake, or a cake for a baby shower, but if you look at it from far away and you don't notice that it's in an oven, what do you think it is? Or you probably think it's someone's cooking their baby in the oven. Good intentions, but the wrong approach maybe, right? Good intention, but the wrong approach. Here's another example, less frightening maybe. So this was from the movie Jurassic World. Now, if you didn't watch the movie, the story is about the bunch of guys, smart guys supposedly, who had this wonderful idea to make this amusement park and to genetically make dinosaurs to make it into an amusement park. But what happens, as you see from this photo, one particular dinosaur didn't like that idea of have people looking at them and rampaging around, killing almost everyone around. Good intentions, bad, wrong approach. Here's something that's probably more familiar for some of us. So, I think, have you said this to someone this week or maybe today? I love you. I think that's a common thing. Have you said it today to someone? Okay. Did you notice what your tone of voice was? So was your tone of voice? So I'll give you an example from my past 2 weeks. I said I love it. My wife Rebecca is here with me in the audience, and I said to Rebecca this: "Honey, I love you. You don't notice anything from my tone of voice, but there was something up. I was up to something. I really thank God that God gives us spouses that are smarter than us, because she knew what I was up to, and she asked in her own way, what do you want? Good intention, but wrong, bad approach. For us, it's the same thing, right? The right intention is there, wrong approach. Every day we go through different battles of some sort. We fight for our relationships. We fight for our faith. We even fight ourselves, if you know what I mean. You fight kind of your identity, things like that. Often we try to fight like harder to get the strength, just to maybe to get to the other side of victory, whatever victory can look like. But I don't know about you, I found that sometimes the key is not necessarily in the victory itself, but it's in the way that we approach the battle. Keep that word in mind, approach, the way we approach the battle. Sometimes in our battles, we may have, again, good intentions, right motives, but it's the wrong approach, the wrong way we're going about it. So in the heat of the moment, what happens? Usually, we fight and struggle, particularly with each other. And we end up putting all our energy into all that, and we find ourselves just tiring ourselves out. We drain ourselves. Maybe even we drain the other person or other persons in the heat of it. So this afternoon, I'm going to suggest to all of us, this includes myself, maybe if we approach our battles the right way, maybe things will be different. Maybe things will be more life-giving as the Lord promised us. Maybe if we approach things differently, we would experience that joy that God wants for us. Today's passage, we're going to take a look at the life of Joshua, or not life, but a part of his life, and how he approached a battle in his life. Let's go into a little background of this passage first. So Moses was the leader. He was a leader of the Israelites, and he was before giving the leadership to Joshua. It was Moses that God gave the job of bringing the Israelites to the promised land, as the Bible says, the promised land, the land of milk and honey, the land of Canaan. The job wasn't easy, as the Israelites were quite an unruly bunch of whining and complaining people. If you remember one of the best, the common stories, you might remember the story of the manna and the quail, right? They wanted to go back to captivity in Egypt because they thought that the bread and water was much better there. And they complained. So Moses got a chance in his time of leadership. He got a chance to set a foot onto the promised land, but he was only allowed to see a glimpse before he passed on, before he died. So we go to Joshua now. Joshua, he's passed the baton of responsibility. He's given the leadership from Moses. One thing to know about Canaan, though Canaan is a big piece of land, it was a big piece of land, a big piece of territory, it was actually very hard to imagine anything of any significance could happen in Canaan, particularly economically or even culturally. But it would become a very important place in God's timing, that is. Much like their journey to Canaan, I think the same thing as us. We tend to do the same when life gets tough and we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. We tend to doubt the goodness and the faithfulness of God. And we have a hard time moving forward. The scarier thing for Joshua was one of his first projects that he was given, or he took on, was to lead the people of Israel through this kind of holy war with Jericho. So what made this hard was the fact that Jericho had a real bad reputation. They had bad reputation of things like child sacrifices, sacred prostitution, and other practices that pretty much exploited those who were the most innocent and vulnerable. And people did these things to manipulate God just for their own selfish gain. So it's really not hard to understand why Joshua would be scared of Jericho. Joshua was like one city away from reaching his goal, but he has to get through Jericho. I think sometimes in our lives, it may not be a Jericho that we're experiencing, but in our own little way, in our own personal way, it feels like the walls are crushing in, doesn't it? A lot of times, it feels like the walls are crushing in. My prayer is that through this passage, God will speak to us and give us hope, show us hope in some way. That if anything, you and I are not alone. You and I are not alone. In the beginning of the passage, it says this: when Joshua was near Jericho. When Joshua was near Jericho. So we can read the entire passage, we can read the entire book of Joshua. We're not given any idea of what this distance it was. Was Joshua around the corner? Was he like a mile away? What we do get as you read it is that feeling. It's that feeling that most of us get when we don't know what to expect. That suspenseful feeling, maybe. It's that feeling we start to get when we get those, like, you ever get those things, like those uncontrollable butterflies that are churning in your stomach, and even though nothing's happening, you don't know why. Why am I nervous? I get like that when I speak up here. But the thing is that even though everyone else is saying, "Oh, you're making it up," no, the anxiety is real. We're not making it up. I feel that. How can you tell me I'm not making it up? Sometimes don't you want to say it to other people? I'm not going to make it up. Though on one hand, it's for Joshua, it's understandable for his reaction because, again, he's probably stressing over Jericho's bad reputation that I just mentioned. Now, if you're honest, most of us don't like surprises. I think most of us don't like surprises to a certain extent, excluding surprise parties and all that, maybe. But I think we don't like being surprised. So when we're in the middle of our own kind of battles, we like to be in control. That big C word. We like to be in control, and that's why one reason why we don't like surprises. So if you remember in John chapter 11, Lazarus was really sick. Lazarus was really, really sick. His sisters, Mary and Martha, they were really anxious over this. So they called Jesus, hoping that he would come help. Why not? Because Jesus, he's already healed others, right? So let's call Jesus. But if you remember in the story, Jesus decides to do something else. He took his time. He took time to stop a lady and help her with a bleeding issue that she was having. So this builds up their anxiety levels more. Then they're saying, our brother's going to die. You don't love us, Jesus. You never did, Jesus. You don't care about me, Jesus. And how many times have we been there that we've said that in some way? You don't love me, Jesus. You don't care about me. Joshua knows this. Joshua knows this very personally. And he shows how he approaches his stressful situation. The passage goes on, and it says this. He looked up, and he saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. A man in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. I don't know about you, so I'm not a tough guy or a tough-looking guy. I don't know about you. If I went outside my home and I saw a guy with a sword in his hand, I'd be scared out of my wits too. Be it if you're a tough guy or a tough woman, I give you credit for that, I would be scared out of my wits too. But we learned soon enough that this person is from God. In doing some more study about this passage, this incident, it's called what Bible scholars call a Christophany. A Christophany. Basically what that means is that it's an appearance of Christ in some way or form. So we can believe this is true in some sense because Joshua bows down in worship, and what you believe or not, it can't be an angel because Revelation chapter 22 says something about that the angels reject our worship because they say that we're both the same. Regardless of the fact that he still bows down in worship, and I think what is the bowing down worship, that he's bowing down worship ultimately to God. Now there's other examples of this whole Christophany thing. Remember the story of Moses and the burning bush? That was an example of an appearance of God or appearance of Christ. Then another example is Paul seeing the bright light when he's on the Damascus road. These are just some examples. So here we are. Joshua is face to face with this Christ figure. She's face to face with the commander of the Lord's army, in a sense, Jesus. But he doesn't recognize him yet. He doesn't recognize him yet. Because he says to this person, or to Jesus in a sense, are you for us, or are you for our enemies? Are you for us, or are you for our enemies? It's understandable he says this again, since all he sees is this guy with a sword in his hand. He's probably just fixated on the fact that he has a sword in his hand. Again, I would probably be fixated on the guy in front of my house with a sword in his hand as well. Plus the fact that he's up against going up against Jericho, that place with that bad reputation. So Joshua is basically asking this person, so are you going to help me now, or are you going to leave me to die? Or are you going to kill me yourself? Now, the response of this Jesus-like figure is classic. He says this, neither. Now, however your cup of soup is, whether or not you pronounce it neither or neither, you take it as it is, tomato, tomato, go ahead. Neither. He says neither. Neither is not an answer that Joshua nor we want from Jesus, from anyone. We don't like that answer, neither. We like kind of, tell me yes or no, right? So just like Joshua, we want answers. We want Jesus to help us now, Jesus, now. Not neither, not even tomorrow, now. But I think there's a reason that Jesus gives him this answer. For Jesus, he wants Joshua to know that he's not only here for not only here for this one battle only. He's with him for every battle of his life. That's the message he wants to tell Joshua. I'm here for every battle of your life. And sometimes we approach Jesus the same thing. We wonder if Jesus, if you're going to be here for this situation or that, and we wait impatiently, pressing for an answer right now in this way. But the honest truth is that we can't limit Jesus to just one situation. And if we're honest, we probably have had Jesus help us in specific situations when we called on him, but only to turn away from Jesus and calling on him other times. I know I've done that. Right? In those other times we don't call on Jesus, in some way we believe that I got this on my own. I got this, Jesus. And we don't say that, but in some way through our actions, that's how we act. I got this, Jesus. Whether we are aware of it or not, I think we do this daily. Jesus is here for us in every situation. Whether we see it, whether we believe it, whether we feel it or not. But it's in his, one thing we have to realize is that he's God. And in his own way and in his own time. That's the hardest thing as for us to chew on. It's in his own way and his own timing. You see, Jesus is not so much concerned about the battles that you and I face, but he's more concerned about the position of our hearts and how it affects our approach to life. Let me say more about that as I continue. So that's why Jesus isn't finished with Joshua yet. That's why he's not finished with him yet. He says to Joshua, and that's where our title of our sermon goes, it says, "Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy." Take off your sandals. Now, in a sense, this is kind of a strange verse. If you just read it like that, take off your sandals. So, if you read it like that, some may interpret as, so does Jesus want me to take off my Crocs, my sandals? Does Jesus want me to take off my whatever sandals you wear, Birkenstocks or slippers? Is that what Jesus wants? No, it's not. And I'll explain more. Take off your sandals. Again, it doesn't answer Joshua's question. Because remember, Joshua is going up against Jericho. Joshua originally was asking for help to fight against Jericho. But it gets this answer. No direction, no game plan, no battle plan, no hint or advice on how to approach Jericho, except take off your Crocs, take off your sandals. And just like Joshua, probably we're like standing there going, take off my Crocs. Okay. When studying the Bible, it's sometimes helpful to do a cross-reference of seeing where else certain words or phrases have occurred in the Bible. So in Matthew chapter 3, in that passage, John is he's talking to the crowds, and in that particular passage, he's particularly talking to the religious leaders. And he's talking about the coming of Jesus, and he says this, the coming of Jesus, whose sandals he's not fit to wear. Whose sandals he's not fit to wear. But I think the story that we are most familiar with is Moses' encounter with the burning bush, where it uses that term, again, sandals. Now, the Bible uses a lot of imagery that fits the historical and the cultural context. So there's two things to know about sandals. One is that sandals back then were normally dusty and dirty, probably with poo on them. Because remember, back then, there was no sewage system that was there. So they probably stepped in a lot of poo. Secondly, is that sandals were also, in a sense, a symbol of confession of personal sin and unworthiness. So taking them off was a sign of confession, was a sign of reverence, humility, and respect, particularly to the other person that they're entering into their home. So that means it's also a way of saying and admitting, I'm neither right nor am I better, but you are. You are the better person. I acknowledge that you are the better person. I respect you for that. In the book of Hebrews, Paul challenges us to throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that entangles us. So Jesus, he stands before your heart, my heart, just like he did to Joshua. He's asking us as well, take off your sandals. He's asking us to walk away from the things that we do or that we think of that are unhealthy, are hurtful to ourselves and to others, especially the things that prevent us from knowing Jesus more. He's calling us to enter a life that's new, that's fresh, that's life-giving, a place where God's love, mercy, and justice, they all intersect. It's a place where we experience the true grace, which is more life-giving than we realize. But it's only if we're willing to take off our sandals. And that means that to put aside my pride, put aside my own personal expectations, put aside what I know or what I don't even know, and trust God for every detail of my life. You know, if Joshua didn't stop and take off his sandals, so to speak, he still would have gone to battle in Jericho. He still would have walked 7 times around the walls, but his heart would have had the wrong posture. His heart would have had the wrong attitude. And who would have known what may have happened if he didn't allow God to work in his heart by telling him, take off your sandals? When we neglect our hearts, when we ignore God, when God's asking us to take off our sandals, we miss out on what God wants for us, wants for me and you. In Guelph, Ontario, if you've been there, there's a riverside park. It's very beautiful. That has large, intricate sculptures made of junk and scraps. Almost every year, the city drains out the river and invites the community to scour the river bottom to clean up the scraps, the garbage. Everything imaginable is found, or maybe unimaginable is found. Old tires, rusty shopping carts, beer cans, car fenders, even toilets. And all these collected items, so they get lined up, piled up along the riverbank. Afterwards, the city commissions sculptors to make masterpieces out of these pieces of junk, pieces of garbage. You see some of them right here. What some see as garbage, the artists transform into ornate, beautiful sculptures that bring beauty to the park. I think for us, unfortunately, and when I say us, I include myself, for many of us, we approach life similarly. What we only choose to see in us and others as garbage, mess-ups, trash, leftover, junk. You know, we often tend to do that. And this affects how we approach others. This affects how we approach life. For some of you, this is seen in your relationships. That is your friends, your family, your neighbors, or the daily stranger that you encounter. You know, these people, they may annoy you, they may frustrate you because they don't measure up to your expectation. So we get more frustrated and we get impatient and we want to fix them or change them to kind of meet how we want them to act, right? But then, if I really dig deep down and think about it, I'm going to get personal here because I don't want to point fingers and think that you are like this. If I really dug down and thought about it, I do this because it's actually for my own comfort and good. It's only to comfort me that I'm trying to change that other person so that I can feel good that they've changed or that I feel good that I've helped them to change. But it's really for my comfort. Have I really changed them? I don't think so. I'm not convinced that I've changed the other person. Because for one thing I know, it's not up to me to change people's hearts. That's only by the Spirit of God. I can only live out my life as a Christ follower to impact the other person, but it's not my responsibility to change them. It's not my right. It's not my right to change them. We all have our personal freedoms and how we are transformed by the will and Spirit of God. But unfortunately, you and I, in different ways, always see our lazy, dumb, maybe, or no good people. And by calling people or seeing people like that, what we're doing is that we're almost like saying, I'm better than you. And if you think about it, that's the same way as how the religious leaders or the Pharisees thought as well to those around them. They thought they were better. So really, I'm no different from these religious leaders or Pharisees. Change is good for people. I'm not saying change is bad. But again, good intention, but sometimes the wrong approach, particularly here. The wrong approach. We all have good intentions, but sometimes the approach is wrong because the posture of our heart is off. But we could take hope that Jesus can use the messiness of our poor approaches and all our sinful and selfish responses to others and sculpt them into something new and beautiful in us and others. We just need to step back, take off our sandals, take off our pride, and trust God. Trust God is bigger and better than all our battles. It's not necessarily what we do, because our methods will not change people's hearts again. Only God can change people. We all have the freedom to make choices, and sometimes those choices are unhealthy and they're harmful ones. But God's great love is He's worked out through the messes, through the storms and temptations, as well as the daily grime of our lives. I remember, so I used to work at the Evergreen Center, the youth center, which is now on Spadina. And I had my fair share of scary and tough moments. One time I was doing door duty. I was working the front door. This older gentleman came to the door. He was quite drunk, and he's wanting food. So I was fine giving him some food, but I asked him, would you mind waiting outside? I'll bring out a takeout container for you of food. He began to get more angry, more belligerent and pushy. He was pushing in the door, pushing in. Again, I'm not a big guy. I'm not a tough-looking guy by no means. So he managed to push his way through enough until what happens is that, so a bunch of youth who I think respected me enough, they saw that I was having difficulty. They came out of nowhere and they said to me, they said to me, Rob, let us handle this. We've got your back. We've got your back. Jesus says that to us too. I've got your back. Let me just end off by offering you some practical tips based upon what I personally learned from this passage. The first thing I learned from this passage is see others and yourself as a masterpiece, not a mess. Believe that God, if you believe that God is Almighty Creator, that means that He doesn't make junk. He doesn't make junk in you, and that means that He doesn't make junk in others. In spite of what other people do to frustrate you, to annoy you, they're still not junk, because the honest truth is that I frustrate and annoy people. Ask my wife. This goes into the next tip, because if I'm honest, because at the heat of the moment, like this whole thing sounds nice. Yeah, see other people as masterpiece. It sounds nice, but sometimes I still don't see or react to people as masterpieces from God. That leads to the second tip. I need to learn to trust that God is better than any approach I have or I currently have in mind. It's only when I acknowledge and believe that God is that God is almighty, God is in control, God knows better than anything I can do, that I'm able to trust God and see that others are masterpieces. That if I believe that God created this other person, and I believe that God forgive me through Jesus, then why can't I forgive the other person? Why can't I be as patient with the other person as Jesus is patient with me? What gives me the right to be impatient to the other person? What gives me the right to be impatient with my wife? Nothing. If Christ is long-suffering, patient with me, what right do I have to be impatient with you? The next tip is this. Surround yourself with people, with Christ-following people who live out their lives with godly grace and love, not condemning nor judging. There's nothing wrong with alone time, because I know we're all built differently, and sometimes we need that alone time to recharge. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about having others in our lives that speak into our lives, and especially that where we're able to sit and hang out with them and learn to receive what they comment to us. Because that's how we grow. That's how we grow, by just hearing in from other people on what they kind of they're concerned about, if anything. Last tip, last but not least. Be a supporter, not an enabler. I wrote there, we need to empathize, but not fix. To encourage, but not protect. We must allow others to suffer the consequences of their actions and not rescue them. To confront them with truth and love, but not try to control them. All of us need to look at whether we are helping or harming. This one is a hard one for me because, to be honest, I know this is a reflection of my selfishness. And I mentioned it in a couple of messages. I'm a people pleaser. So that means that I can tend to lean towards enabling by avoiding conflict, that kind of thing. But am I helping the other person by being a nice trying to please you? No. In the long run, I'm not. You may see me as a nice guy. Sure, that's nice. But in the long run, I'm not helping me, nor am I helping the other person. So this one is the hardest one for me to keep learning. And I stand here as a learner with you, and trusting that the grace of God is still at work in me. So even though life is sometimes pretty tough, Jesus says to us, let me handle this Jericho battle you're facing. But I want you to know I have more than your back on this battle. I got your whole life. I got your whole life in my hands. I got your whole life in my big, powerful hands. I gave up my life. This is Jesus speaking to us. I gave up my life so you can have yours back. Don't you want to experience this abundant life I gladly give to you? Don't you want to experience the freedom that my life has given you? I know life won't be easy. I never said it would be. But you won't be alone on this. All I ask of you is to take off your sandals and trust me with every detail of your life. Will you take off your sandals? So as I close, I want to just use a favorite hymn of mine as a closing prayer, closing whatever. And it's, the hymn it's taken from When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. This speaks to my heart personally, and it speaks to the heart of this message. May God use this to speak to yours. So this is what the verse says, and I use it as an ending. When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Blessings to you as you continue.